Thanks for the warning. I didn't know I was going to be on video. I have a face for radio. My name is Billy Dees. I just go by Bill. And I have somewhat of a mixed bag in terms of a resume. That's for sure. When I was about 20, 21, 22 years old, around in there, I started a company called Sound Perfection. Some of you may or may not remember it. This was around 1986, 1987, around there somewhere. We did large professional PA systems. We did a lot of music for special events. There was a production side. This was back in the days when you recorded on this ribbon-like material. It was called tape. And actually, I had and I still have it, what's called a half track. I have a Tascam 32 half track, runs 15 IPS, and actually it sounds very good, even by today's standards. And back in those days, when you took advertisements to radio stations, it was done on a little half track machine. And that's how they were little carts, and they would load them in and hit them, and then that's how they would work. I remember driving them around back in those days. It was a lot of fun. I had that business for almost 20 years. 20 years seems to be where I peak out at things. And obviously I don't have it anymore, but I do consider it a success because as young as I was when I started that company, I didn't work full-time for anyone until I was well into my 30s. And I did all the normal things that people do, bought a house, bought a car. I never was rich, but I got by as if I would work for somebody else. And so I consider that a success. I also worked in the high-end consumer electronics industry for many years, mostly high-end audio. And that was a full-time job up until the last couple of years. And learned a lot of things with that because I'll tell you, consumer electronics has changed enormously over the past 20 years, especially the high-end market. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people today, millennials and so forth, I'm not sure how many of them even are aware that there is such a thing as high-end audio. So, that was a real challenge when that started to change because you had to educate the customer before you could make the sale. And I also got some really good insights. Went to Macintosh Labs a few years ago. That's MCI, not MAC. It's the audio company, the guy that did the big amplifiers. And they have an anechoic chamber there at their company, and that was a fun experience. Some people freak out in there. And what it is basically is a room that deadens the sound completely, both within the room and from outside sources. And they test speakers in there. And it's claustrophobic to begin with, and a lot of people kind of freak out in there because they've never heard dead silence before. And that's different than being deaf. When you're in there, you can hear your heart beating, you can hear the pulse in your ears, you can hear yourself breathing. Not too many people can, especially being claustrophobic to begin with, they don't handle that too well. And when you're in there, you will hear a certain amount of ringing in your ears, and that's not caused by the room, but that's actually exposing it to you. When we're in this room, the ambient sound of the traffic and the ventilation system and so on and so forth covers that up. But in that room, that ringing is the damage that you have done to your ears over the years from lawnmowers and everything else. And as much as I've been exposed to loud music, I didn't have too much of that. So I was very grateful for that. I also worked in the restaurant and bar business for 20 years. And that's a whole different strategy there in terms of how to promote that. Food service, alcohol, bands, DJs, all that type of thing. And you're probably wondering, well, you don't look like you're 90 years old. A lot of that overlapped. For many, many years, I worked full-time during the week. And then in the evenings, I would do my own thing. And then on the weekends, I would work at the restaurants and the bars. And a lot of that contributed to burnout. So a couple years ago, I started to basically take it easy for a while. And now I have, about 2 years ago, I started doing digital media for essentially what is content marketing. It assists in your content marketing plan. And that can include what you're doing on your website, your social media, and all these other wonderful things. And that's been an interesting experience too, because that's a burgeoning industry. Now, I kind of feel I'm in a good position there. I have found that when it comes to technology, it's best right now, the way things stand, to deal with somebody who's middle-aged. Okay, because I'll tell you why. It's a misnomer that millennials know everything about technology. That is not true. They are very good with software, very good with apps. But when it comes to electronics, things like resistance, signal flow, not so much. The older guys are really good with traditional electronics. They understand what transistors and all that other type of thing do, but they're not so good with software. So right now, as it stands, just as a humorous comment, middle age seems to be, I came in the early 90s when the computer wave started coming in, and I had a long history of being with electronics, so it's kind of a good merger for me. And it's also half creative and half technical, which I kind of like. I'm not one of these creative types that's going to cut my ear off, and I'm not a geek either. I'm kind of in between. I have a good understanding of technology. I also enjoy being creative. Now, during the past 25 years, I can tell you that in various capacities, whether it be working for people, having employees, having worked with people who have other clients, being in the areas where you're learning about marketing and the consumer electronics industry, a lot of mentalities, a lot of people who had retail stores with different approaches about things. I worked for people that were millionaires, and I worked for people who pretty near lost everything and everything in between. And I can tell you that there's in my opinion, there's two things that people who are, for the most part, successful seem to do well. And that is, number one, they know what kind of company they want. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the second thing is, they are consistent in their message. They are consistent in their image. And this is especially true now, more so than it was when I first started, even though it was true then. With traditional advertising, you have radio, TV, print, cable TV, all these things that we've been doing for years and years. We now have social media, and social media can be all over the place. You can have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. And the thing about it is, in that world, you cannot ignore anything. What your grandkids or your kids are doing in the back seat of the car driving you crazy with is something 6 months from now you're going to be researching. You can't ignore the latest shiny object anymore. So it's not a joke anymore. You really have to be aware of what's going on in social media. And then there's kind of what I do, the digital media. There's pictures, digital pictures, there's videos, there's podcasts, there's all these other great things. And you have to make sure that what you're doing, the content you're creating there, fits the image of what you want your company to be. And by the way, now, in regard to podcasts, let me just throw this in here. I feel a lot of people have an idea of a podcast as something that has to emulate internet radio. And I'm guilty of creating that image. I come from that world. I work in the DJ world, so to speak. And that's fine. That's great. That has a place. But for what we are talking about, for companies, for institutions of any kind, the word podcast actually comes from a merger of iPod and broadcast. It's kind of where it came from. And actually, that's been around a long time. It's been a little bit of 10 years or so. But in the last few years, it's come to the attention of people who do marketing that it can be a great tool because it does not require your total attention. More and more stuff is coming across your phone these days. And to stop and read something takes effort. To watch a video, to sit and watch it, okay? Podcasts you can pretty much listen to while you're doing anything. While you're commuting, while you're doing the dishes, while you're on your treadmill, whatever. So it's a great way, a convenient way to give your potential audience a way to get information about you and your industry. Now, talking about content. Content is kind of where I feel comfortable. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the more fancier ways to get content out there briefly, but creating content for me is the basic thing that you need to do consistently and do it well, and it has never changed. Years ago, when people were handing out flyers to promote their business, the same rules to what's on that flyer applies today to what you're tweeting out. It's the same information, okay? And in that whole world of creating content, I have noticed when I have talked to people recently that have been in the business for a long time, they've had their business for 30 years, and they bought radio ads in the 70s and 80s, okay? And I started telling them about content marketing, which is, just for the sake of clarity, is simply put, you're going to create information that people are going to find, and hopefully that information is going to lead them to you, okay? Now, what people have a hard time with is that represents a fundamental shift in what worked in the past. Before, when you did advertising back in the 1970s and you had an ad on the radio, it was all about you. Come on down and see me. You got any questions about what you're doing? Come see me. You want the best service, best quality? Come see me. Okay? Now you're telling people that you are going to create content that is going to serve them. That's an odd concept. It sounds kind of odd, but it is a little quirk. Okay, people aren't used to that. Content can be in the form of blogs. You can write articles on your website. You can have detailed posts in your LinkedIn, on your Facebook page. You can do videos. You can do podcasts. This is all creating content that people are going to find, and hopefully it is going to lead them to you. And here's very important, like I said, the fundamental shift. Remember the Bee Gees song, Jive Talking? Okay, this is not where that belongs. Okay, you need to create good, objective information that people are going to find. What I mean by that, let's say, for example, you have a cleaning company. You're selling cleaning products. And you decide to put a video on your website about how to get a stain out of a carpet. Okay, that should be information that is unbiased, does not serve you, should not sound like an infomercial. It should not be an opportunity for you to grandize yourself. That will turn off a modern audience. Because people do not look essentially for products specifically anymore. When they have a problem like that, they pick this up and they go, how do I get a chocolate milk stain out of my carpet? Okay? And you want to make sure that when they find that information, they trust it. Because if they trust it, then there's a very good chance it's going to lead them to you. This is one of the few cases where being honest and objective is not only ethically the right thing to do, but it is a great marketing strategy. Now, one of the things I've had criticized about this whole thing is that, well, if you give people too much information, they're going to go somewhere else. And I heard that a lot when I was selling electronics. People would research this stuff and then come in and then ask me questions about a competitor's product. I always felt that, answer them honestly. It's one thing to go on and on about it, but you should at least give them an honest answer. I believe that 80% of the time it's going to serve you well. Now, there will be times when they make the decision that, you know what, appreciate you telling me that, but the other guy I talked to I think has a better product. That is going to happen. And you have to accept that. But I believe, my good-natured, naive self, that will pay you dividends. Because down the road, they'll remember that. And when they have an opportunity to buy something else or to recommend you to somebody else, they're going to say, you know what? Go talk to this guy. It didn't work out for me. It wasn't what I wanted, but he was honest with me. Start looking there. And I really believe that building trust with your clients, your potential client base, is very, very important. Now, I'm going to touch a little bit about context marketing. And this kind of fits in the whole world of inbound strategies and some of the other things that you may hear. This is a way of manipulating that information or designing it, customizing it for a specific client base. Context marketing is delivering the right content to the right people at the right time. Context marketing provides a more personalized and relevant marketing strategy that is tailored to your client's needs. When you are creating marketing that is targeted at the point of need, it is more likely that that information will perform better. So what that means is when you're creating content and you're aiming it, you're considering things like, is your potential client base a business-to-business customer or a business-to-client customer? What industry do they work in? What kind of content do they like best? What channels do they normally get their content? Are they hanging out on Facebook? Are they hanging out on LinkedIn? Are they currently using another provider of your service that is possibly a competitor? And why are they doing that? And do they have a budget? One of the ways that I really feel there's a missed opportunity to send people customized content is kind of in this situation. And I have been witness to this. I have been in offices. I don't know how many times this has happened. Okay? The boss says, Paul, you were talking about a really big job a week or so ago. Whatever happened with that? Paul's sitting there at his computer clicking. Sent him a quote. Never heard nothing back. Happens a million times. What does the boss say? Well, why don't you, find out what's going on with that? Okay. So what does Paul do? Sends an email. Yeah, I sent you a quote last week. What's going on with that? What happens? Now, boss comes in and says, did you ever hear back from that? What's going on there? Well, I asked them and never heard nothing back. That's a great opportunity to send somebody customized content. It's a great opportunity. Instead of sending a lame brain email like that or some weird voice message, wouldn't it be great to send them an email that had a video or a podcast or something really cool in it that said, you could preface it by, hey, look, I know this is a big decision. I know exactly what you're worried about. And you know what? On our website, we have this great video that addresses some of the concerns that you're going through right now. Okay, so go ahead and check out this video. Take your time. If you have any questions, let me know. Don't even ask about the quote. Okay, now you've given somebody something that is viable, information that they might consider, they may not, but that connection between that information and you is there. It's a great opportunity to use content. Great opportunity. Now, with that being said, I'm going to come back to one of my little passions. If you consider the world of traditional advertising, if you consider the world of content marketing, if you consider the world of social media marketing, and if you are going to invest in inbound strategies, which can be enormously expensive, ad placements, search engine optimization, and all this wonderful stuff, here's what I have found very frustrating. Is that people spend all this money to attract attention to their website or wherever it is that they want this attention to go. And what's there when they get there? I have found it odd that some of the people who made the same mistakes in traditional advertising, doing things like, when I was doing radio ads for people, I'd always tell people, don't clutter your ad up with Monday special this, Tuesday special that, Wednesday we're having a sale on this. People don't retain that. They don't. And they make the same mistakes with their social media marketing. All the tweets have the same information in them. And when they find you, they find a bunch of gobbledygook. And I'll tell you what's the absolute worst thing, like I was talking about, a shift from how you have to approach what you're doing philosophically. You have to keep in mind that you're providing content that is good for the person that's out there. This new world of content marketing is completely away from what has happened recently on the internet, which is push advertising. I know that if I'm attracted to your ad on the internet, and I go to your website and I start to read something interesting, all of a sudden this big banner blasts all over the front, I'll dump that website. If that's the best way that you can present yourself, I don't want nothing to do with your company. Okay? So you want to make sure that after spending all that money, They're spending all that time on social media, whether it's yourself or paying your staff to do it. When people finally find you, they find information that is worth checking out, worth visiting, worth watching on the video, worth listening to on the podcast, or what have you. And here's where we're going to get into what I prefaced this about what kind of company that you want. Here again, I don't pretend to be a marketing guru or an expert in business, but I can tell you all of the years that I've witnessed things, that there are basically two types of companies. One is price driven. The other one is customized services. There are variations of that. Obviously, this is more applicable to some things than others, but even if you're an attorney, okay, you're the guy that people go to when they want a cheap, quick divorce, okay, or you're the guy people go to when you've got a nightmare on your hands. You're going to have to pay big for that, okay? I don't believe that you can do both. And I've worked for people that says, never turn away business, never turn away business. Better you take the money than somebody else. No, it's not true. If you are running a price-driven business, like some of these big box stores, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I went and I bought a computer, I got a real good price on it, okay? But I called over there a couple days later, I couldn't get nobody on the phone. And when I did, nobody knew what I was talking about. How can you run a business like that? It's not incompetence. It's by design. They don't want to get involved with that. Okay? What they want their salespeople to do is sell you stuff quick at a good price. That's it. They don't want to get bogged down in a lot of details. By the same token, if you are running a company that does professional computer integration, you're setting up networks for people in their businesses, okay? And you give somebody a proposal. And that customer does this. Oh, I found this server on Deals R Us, and I found this other thing over here on this other website. Can you match those prices? 9 times out of 10, that type of company is going to say, look, here it is. You want to do it? We'll be happy to do it for you. Sign right there. Otherwise, go pound salt. Okay? Because those people that nickel and dime you on the custom end do nothing but destroy the morale of your company. Do nothing but frustrate you and take time away from your other clients who have come to you in good faith for service. Can't do both. Turn stuff over at a good price, or give people customized services, one or the other. Now, once you've done that, obviously there's a lot of nuance to that. You can assign any personality you want to do to your business, and once you do, make sure you are consistent. Okay? Give you another quick little scenario. I don't know how many times I've heard this situation play out. Well, probably could use a little bit more business. Maybe we should try radio advertising. Why don't we do some radio advertising? That cute girl comes in here all the time, always trying to sell us some advertising. Why don't we give her a call? Okay? So, you have her come in, she wants you to sign a 13-week contract. Man, we got 13 weeks. What do we talk about this week? Well, we got these things over here that have been sitting here for 6 months. We've been trying to get rid of them. Why don't we do an ad about doing a good price on that? And we have this other thing sitting over here. You know what? I bet we could have those DJs give it away. They could give us some free airtime if they gave that away. All right? 13 weeks goes by, and what happens? Well, I guess radio advertising doesn't work. Let's try the social media thing. So do a Facebook page. Hey, we hired a new guy, fresh out of college. He doesn't do nothing but sit there and answer the phone. Let's have him manage our Facebook page for us. Get some use out of it, right? What do we have him do? Man, talk about these things over here that have been sitting here for 6 months. Okay? And there's this thing over here. The real like to get rid of that. We'll send that out the next day. Same mistakes over and over again. The right way to do this is getting back to once you've decided how your company is going to run, is decide, if you're a believer, you call it the soul. Science calls it the will. When you shake somebody's hand, get a nice firm handshake, okay? And you get a good idea of what that person is all about, right? In that moment. And people who connect with you, no matter where it is, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on your social media, whether it's running across a video that you have done, you want to make sure that that essence, that will is there in some way, shape, or form. If you can't answer, if I ask you, what is it about your company? What is your essence? What is your heartbeat? Can you tell me what it is? If you can't answer it, that's really bad, because there's a good chance that nobody else can either. You know, in the late 1990s, the technology that governed computers was well understood. All the major technological companies that were out there knew exactly how hard drives worked. They knew exactly how processors worked. They knew exactly why memory was important. The technology was well understood. To some small degree, there was some variance, but for the most part, in terms of hardware, there wasn't a whole lot of difference between one computer and another. Okay? Now, IBM was a faceless, anonymous company. They understood the technology, I guarantee you that, but they were a faceless, anonymous company. Another company came along by the name of Apple that was just loaded with personality. And personality is what people bought into. Now, we could get into a debate how much of it was real, how much of it was software, and how much of it was myth, but it worked. And it doesn't have to be a company that has the stature of Apple to do it. You can look right around here at some local companies, at some local entities that do it very well. I'll give you a couple examples. Fall in love with your home again. Fall in love with your home. Beautiful. Talks about stability, family, value, and quality, all in that one phrase. And anytime you come in contact with that company, that's the message that you get. Here's another one. I'll make them pay. Success. Payback. Power. Confidence. It's all there. In that one 10-second commercial. It is right there. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Today's environment can be very complicated in the world of keyword search results, inbound marketing, and the time it takes to manage your social media properly can be very time consuming. You don't have to do it all in one day. But start with the basics first. That would be my message to you. Have a business identity that is instantly recognizable. Be consistent with your advertising and marketing across all of the platforms that we have talked about today. And that is my word for today.
Thank you.